Hello and welcome everyone. Today we'll be talking about one of the most dreaded and supposedly complicated topics in human physiology, the action potential. After this video, I'll show you, hopefully, that the action potential is actually quite simple. You'll be surprised. Before we start and discuss the action potential itself, we need to lay down some first principles. The first is that the interior of the cell, the inside of the cell, is more negative compared to the outside of the cell, which is more positive. Second principle is that certain ions will rudimentarily define ions here as a charged atom or a charged molecule. Certain ions are more concentrated in either inside the cell or outside the cell. For example, the ion sodium is more concentrated outside the cell, whereas the ion potassium is more concentrated inside the cell. Chloride, which is negatively charged, is more concentrated outside the cell. And to counterbalance the negativity of chloride, we have organic phosphates and proteins, which are negatively charged, being more concentrated inside the cell. And so this difference in ionic concentration, in whether which ions are concentrated more in the cell and which are more concentrated outside of the cell, this difference creates a phenomenon called the membrane potential. The membrane potential. The membrane potential is defined as the potential difference across the cell membrane. In even simpler terms, that means the membrane potential is the difference in ion concentration across the cell membrane. And as an aside, we may recall from physics that potential difference is also known as voltage. Voltage. Therefore, there is a voltage across the cell membrane. And now we're ready to discuss the action potential. The membrane potential at rest, that is, when the cell is not being stimulated, it's not firing an action potential, is called, for obvious reasons, the resting membrane potential. And for most cells, for excitable cells that is, which are neurons and muscle cells, the resting membrane potential in general has a value of negative 70 millivolts. Why is it negative? Because we recall that the interior of the cell is more negative compared to the outside of the cell, and the membrane potential is always expressed with respect in relation to the inside of the cell, which is again negative. However, when a stimulus, which is actually another action potential, when an action potential from a neighboring site comes and reaches this cell, which we are talking about, this resting membrane potential will become less negative. The process of making the membrane potential less negative is a process called depolarization. Depolarization. So an action potential comes, it makes this cell less negative, it depolarizes the cell, And when the membrane potential reaches a value approximately plus 15 millivolts of the resting membrane potential, which is roughly around negative 55 millivolts, because negative 55 millivolts is roughly plus 15 of 70. This will trigger the opening of what are called voltage-gated sodium channels. Voltage-gated sodium channels are ion channels that line the cell membrane, and they open up when there is a depolarization that is enough to trigger an action potential. That membrane potential, which is enough to trigger an action potential, we call the threshold potential. And the threshold potential in general is plus 15 millivolts of the RMP, of the resting membrane potential. Now, when we talk about the voltage-gated sodium channel, it's important to think of it looking like this. So it's obviously a channel. And at the end of the channel, there's like a ball sticking out of it attached to the ion channel via a string or via a rope. And we'll go more into that as to why that looks like that in a short while. So the voltage-gated sodium channels are opened up by the depolarization. And when they open up, what happens is the sodium ions rush into the cell. There is an influx of sodium ions into the cell. Why does sodium move into the cell? Because number one, the inside of the cell is more negative, and we remember that sodium ions are positive. And number two, there is a higher concentration of sodium outside of the cell, and we recall that ions always move down their concentration gradient. So there's a net movement of sodium ions into the cell until eventually this whole phase is depolarization phase, causing the membrane potential to be less and less negative until eventually the membrane potential is not only less negative, it becomes positive. It will eventually reach a peak, the peak roughly around positive 30 millivolts. We call this the overshoot. The overshoot. However, this depolarization actually triggers two things. Number one, it causes this ball compartment over here of the voltage-gated sodium channel to eventually close the gate, the opening of the sodium channel. This ball part here we call the inactivation gate of the sodium ion channel. Second thing that is triggered by the depolarization is the slow-moving voltage-gated potassium channels, another kind of voltage-gated ion channels along the cell membrane, open up. However, they open up very slowly. They're not as fast in opening and closing as the voltage-gated sodium channels. Their opening and also their closing, we'll go more into that shortly, are quite slow, which is why we feel their effect later on here in the downslope still. We don't feel their effect immediately. And what is the relevance of the voltage-gated potassium channels? If they open up, we recall that there is more potassium inside the cell. And so potassium will have an incentive, a concentration gradient incentive to move out of the cell. And what is potassium? It's also positively charged. It's a positively charged ion. And when potassium leaves the cell, what will happen? The interior of the cell will become more and more negative again. The process of moving the membrane potential to become more negative, to become closer to the resting membrane potential is called repolarization. Repolarization. Depolarization, making the membrane potential less negative, farther from the RMP. Repolarization is making the membrane potential more negative, closer to the RMP. However, we remember that the voltage-gated potassium channels are slow to act. They are slow to open and they are slow to close as well. And because they are slow to close, they remain open for a prolonged period of time, causing, even if we already reach the RMP, we are still allowing potassium to leave the cell, even if we have already reached the resting membrane potential. And so there is a brief period of time in the action potential where the membrane potential is more negative than the resting membrane potential. This part here is called the undershoot, aka hyperpolarization, aka hyperpolarizing after potential. But it's most commonly referred to as the hyperpolarization phase. Eventually, though, the voltage-gated potassium channels realize that they've been opened up for an unnecessarily long period of time, and so they will eventually close slowly. And when they close, we prevent the net efflux, the net movement out of the potassium ion channels, and eventually we therefore reach the resting membrane potential once more. And the cell, again, we remember that only excitable cells, namely nerve cells and muscle cells, are able to produce an action potential. So a skin cell will not be able to produce an action potential. Excitable cells, once they reach the resting membrane potential, they are ready once more to produce an action potential if they are adequately triggered. We recall that an action potential is triggered by another action potential. That is the most common trigger. Which of course begs the question, where did the original action potential come from? What is the origin of all of the action potentials? To answer that question, we must discuss this concept of postsynaptic potentials or PSPs. And we go to this special part of the neuron or the nerve cell called the axon hillock. All action potentials are generated from the axon hillock. The axon hillock is the part of the nerve cell immediately after the cell body, aka the soma, and immediately before the bulk of the axon. Action potentials are generated, are produced from the axon hillock. But how are they produced? The nerve cell here actually is in contact, comes into communication with another previous nerve cell. The previous nerve cell is not shown in its entirety, but this green part here and this red part also at the bottom, this is an axon terminal of the previous neuron. The communication between this axon terminal and this yellow nerve cell over here is via a gap, this space called a synapse. The nerve cell before the synapse is called the presynaptic neuron, the presynaptic nerve cell, and the nerve cell after the synapse is the postsynaptic neuron. Various chemicals called neurotransmitters are released from the presynaptic nerve cell. They travel the synapse and they eventually bind to receptors in the postsynaptic nerve cell. And neurotransmitters can either be excitatory or inhibitory, depending on whether they produce excitatory or inhibitory postsynaptic potentials, respectively. Neurotransmitters such as glutamate, the most popular example, are excitatory because they produce excitatory postsynaptic potentials. Whereas neurotransmitters like GABA, GABA, are inhibitory because they produce inhibitory postsynaptic potentials. But what are EPSPs and IPSPs exactly? EPSPs are the signals produced by excitatory neurotransmitters, and signals, these potentials, move the membrane potential of the postsynaptic nerve cell less negative. IPSPs or inhibitory postsynaptic potentials, on the other hand, are potentials that move the resting membrane potential more negative. So EPSPs produced by excitatory neurotransmitters, they are potentials which move the membrane potential to become less negative. Inhibitory postsynaptic potentials, they move the membrane potential to become more negative. And at any given time, different neurotransmitters are received by the postsynaptic nerve cell. Some are excitatory, which produce EPSPs. Some are inhibitory, which produce IPSPs. And what happens is there is a contest. The EPSPs and the IPSPs fight it out. And the difference of EPSPs and IPSPs with the action potential is that they are additive. They are graded. That means that, unlike the action potential, which cannot add up with each other, the EPSPs and IPSPs add up with each other. And if the total reaches threshold potential, which we recall is in general plus 15 millivolts of the resting membrane potential, if the total of the postsynaptic potentials reaches the threshold potential, then we are able to produce an action potential. And if we are able to produce an action potential, the action potential will propagate from the axon hillock and all the way along the trail of the axon.